I guess, the next stage in the process, because obviously at some point we're going to get back to the economy being more open, and for organizations to be able to attract and hire the talent that they need. Again, that's going to be a hugely important part in restarting the economy. So the talent acquisition community have a hugely important role to play in that, and we want to talk about some insights and some things that they can do to make sure that that works as effectively as possible. So before I turn over to Jeff, just a couple of little housekeeping points. The Q&A button at the bottom is if you want to ask the panelists any questions, and then we'll make sure that we get those incorporated as we go through. You know, one of the things that we do with all of our events is to try to make them as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask your questions as we go. And then the comments or chat button, if you just want to make any remarks or comments as we go, then use that. So hopefully that's clear. Jeff, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here. I know you're still in sort of 100-mile-an-hour mode, so we're particularly grateful that you've been able to join us. But we'll turn the conversation over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to share now. He says, select an application, screen, share. Okie dokie. So can everyone see the first picture there of the climber?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. Look, so Jeff Uden, Head of Talent for Iceland Foods, and I just wanted to talk through that little bit of a journey that we've had over these past, believe it or not, it's not even been a month. So it's quite incredible as to what we've actually gone through. But the situation that we've had, we've been in a really fortunate situation overall as a business. We've still been regarded as essential and as a supermarket, much like the other supermarkets that are on here. We've been fortunate enough to be regarded as key workers. And so therefore, we certainly haven't gone through some of those really troublesome times that many other businesses have actually gone through. And there's been an incredible period where sales have hugely escalated. It all started off back in around about the middle of March, really, where as a whole, we know that we went through a big situation of panic buying. Sales jumped hugely, and we knew that we had a huge mountain to climb. But normally we have time to plan that. Normally we have time to build it when we are looking at those numbers. We knew how to climb that mountain. We knew what the support was that we actually needed to put into place. We knew the route that we had to go up, but it's never been as steep as what it had been, certainly in the middle of March. And on average, the food retail industry experienced on average about 15% growth over that time. Us as a business were one of those leading retailers, and we were experiencing volumes that were in excess of our normal Christmas trading, which was certainly unprecedented in these times. And what we needed to do was we needed to balance those resources. But we also knew that overall as a business, that challenge wouldn't just be for us, it would be a challenge across the industry. And we knew that what we had to do needed to be different from those other retailers in order to make sure that we stand out. So what we did was we looked at our current way of operating, and we needed to make some fairly drastic decisions. Now, as a business, we knew that actually there were so many unknowns. We didn't know how long we were going to be staying in lockdown. Indeed, right at the very beginning, we weren't even in lockdown at that particular point in time. We didn't know how many people we required. We didn't know how long we needed those individuals for. So actually, as a business, we made the brave decision of going with 0-hour contracts. We've never employed 0-hour contracts before as a business. In fact, we are completely against it as a business in normal times. But we wanted to do those 0-hour contracts, though, to give those opportunities to people who really needed it and needed an additional income to actually be coming in, whilst not compromising their existing arrangements. We did not want to take advantage of the situation in any way. We wanted to be staying true to our brand. We wanted to be kind, we wanted to be caring, but we wanted them to be Iceland as well. And so being clear about what it was that we wanted, very bold, simple message about that, needing those staff, but also about feeding the nation and helping them to understand that this is part of a bigger picture that all supermarkets and all key workers from a retailing point of view needed to get involved in. This was not about how do we increase sales. This was not about how do we increase our staffing in the cheapest possible way. This was about making sure that everyone at the end of this came out of it in the best possible place that they could be in for themselves. So what did that mean for us? Well, it was a real challenge in terms of time, in particular, for our store managers and everyone on the front line. That opportunity for them to be doing anything additional outside of actually making sure that the shelves were full and we were serving customers. The time just wasn't there to be doing that. And we knew that there would actually be a demand for people wanting to actually be joining our business. And we needed to also get people on board in exactly the right way. So what we did was we actually stripped back and we looked at the whole recruitment process again. The overriding question that we had that steered all of our decisions around the recruitment was, how do we significantly reduce the amount of involvement of the line manager within this? And that caused us to look at and review every single recruitment process again. We knew what we had was actually a very good way of doing recruitment for Iceland. But actually it was completely reliant upon the store manager. And that we also discovered that that best way that we did actually have in place was very corporate. And actually it tied up the managers unnecessarily in times when they need to be taking on board staff as quickly as they possibly can. So what we did was we looked at all of those processes. We looked at all of the background processes in order to supplement that aim of minimal line manager involvement. Our applicant tracking system was successful in sifting out many of the individuals. So its current rate of sifting out individuals is around about 60% of those who apply actually come out using the automation that's sitting within the ATS, but we needed that number to be significantly increased. So we made that decision to revise every process, and we actually ended up bringing all of the recruitment in-house and centralizing it through our recruitment team. The online process was revised to incorporate some of those key questions from our existing paper-based interview processes in stores. So what we did was we looked at those questions, identified the questions that most managers based their recruitment decisions on in store, and put those as part of that recruitment process actually online in order to sift out even more. And then we then, as a centralized recruitment team, then sifted through those applications, and then handed it over to the store manager only at the very last moment. And the purpose of that was for the store manager to be the person who understands whether or not there was a cultural fit in that store, and not necessarily a cultural fit within the business itself. We also looked at the process in stores for new starters and created an interim automation process between our IT department and our ATS provider, so that all the admin was actually completed prior to an individual actually starting in store. So when the individual did start in the store, the only thing that they had to concern themselves about was serving the customers, and not through any of the additional admin that is normally required, or the training or the induction. We also did something very different for us as well. We identified some key retailers actually on the high street and partnered up with them. We wanted to be able to fully support other retailers on the high street by providing temporary opportunities to their employees. This is not and was not about poaching their staff. It's about preserving their staff by providing that income stream to prevent them from leaving their existing roles. These partners are trusted retailers in our eyes that are a good cultural fit with our business and also understand our customer base as well. We set up an internal account manager that worked directly with the heads of resourcing and talent in those other businesses, and provided a fast track opportunity to roles within our business. This is definitely an opportunity for us going forward in how we recruit new employees at a specific time of the year, and has actually worked very well for us. So what was the end result of going through and doing that? Well, as of today, we received over 170,000 applications. We've made over 4,000 offers of employment, and that equates to just over 15% of our total headcount. Our 0-hour contracted staff are working on average 18 hours per week, and our store manager recruitment and setup time has been reduced by 90% for our frontline colleagues. We went back to our roots as a business and ditched the corporate way of working and became more entrepreneurial again. We developed solutions in days, whereas they would have ordinarily have taken months, with a view from the business that 80% is okay. We still have to balance things out though with the candidate experience, but this way of operating will now allow us to concentrate and spend more time on that employee experience in order to reinforce our brand. So happy now to take any questions that may come through. Is there anything from your side, Ken?
Unmute myself. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, there were a couple of questions that popped up straight away. One was around the impact on diversity, and were the new processes, did they, I guess, help or hinder, and in particular their impact on people with disabilities?
Yes, it's actually it has been one of the positive benefits of it. So this element of the unconscious bias from the store manager, because we were recruiting in bulk and recruiting centrally, we weren't taking decisions or we weren't making decisions perhaps on other elements. We were purely looking at those skills that were coming through within the application form, within those 3 key questions, and we were making decisions about that. So from a bias point of view, from an unconscious bias point of view, even from a disability point of view, none of that came into the decision-making process. The decision-making process was about making sure that the customer service was good, and making sure that they understood about the challenges that were within the business. But if they were able to do that, then they were the right people for the business.
I mean that's quite. I have to confess, I thought it may have been the other way around. That you know, the impact on diversity would have been negative, but it sounds as if it was actually the opposite.
It absolutely has been the opposite. I'm going through what we did just prior to this. Fortunately, was we added in into our ATS some monitoring around ethnicity. So that is going to be one of the reviews that we go through and we look at is how does that actually come through and what has been the effect on that. But I can safely say that looking through the number of individuals that have now joined the business, the variety is clearly there from the names, but also from the aspect of we take a great deal of pride around recruiting individuals that work within 3 miles of our stores. And that has also still been reinforced about that. So actually the diversity and the mix is still retained from the local communities that we actually have our stores in.
Brilliant, very good. And another question was around how you identified other retailers that would have a good culture fit when you were looking at this issue of helping them with staff that weren't working.
So there are companies that we tie up with naturally, and that's been through connections that either I have, the HRD has, or alternatively the Walkers as a family have. And we've worked with those over a number of different years to help each other out, whether that's through things like, for example, apprenticeship levies and that sort of thing in terms of providing clarification around it. And we know through working with those businesses that actually their cultures are very, very similar to ours. And that's why they were the first points of call for us.
Okay. So I have a question, and it's an unfair one, right? And I think at the minute asking people what mistakes they've made in a process that is still evolving, I think is premature. But I'll kind of ask it anyway. Even in such a short time, is there anything that you kind of look at, you know, over the last few weeks and say, actually, if we had to do this again, we would have done it slightly differently?
I think the one mistake that I would say is that the way in which we've recruited and the way in which we went through and did the bulk recruitment, we recruited a standard amount for every store. So we didn't take into specific account, this store needs X amount of people, this store needs Y amount of people. What we did was we said, right, across the board, we need to make sure that we've got a decent amount of people going into each of those stores. So actually what that has done in some situations is has caused an excess number of contracts for some stores, and in other stores it's not enough contracts. So where we made the decision to bulk recruit in that way, and because we needed to get it off the ground very quickly as opposed to understanding each individual store's needs, then you know that has caused a slight issue as we've gone through with it. And that issue has been that we've had to, in some stores, actually go back and recruit again because we haven't necessarily got the full numbers through. So that's been probably our biggest challenge. But you know, waiting on, even though we asked all of the store managers to advertise the relevant vacancies that they actually had in order to attract the number of applications, I think as many people will know on the call, you know, some of those requests aren't always fully taken on board and fully complied with, and you know that's what we were up against, was those constant changing needs around that.
And you mentioned in your comments that your previous ways of working were very corporate. I mean, did how did that kind of manifest itself? I mean, what were the sorts of things that you would say were overly corporate?
Um, I think the amount of paperwork and the amount of bureaucracy that we were expecting our managers to actually be completing as we're going through, um, it felt as though we were being overly safe in terms of our recruitment methods. And actually what we were doing was, and what this allowed us to do, was to strip back to say, what is the bare minimum that we can do? And how can we get that back into the process? So from a corporate point of view, I think we were spending a lot of time on making sure that things were absolutely spot on, that things were looking absolutely great, whereas actually there wasn't a need to do that. If basically it was a functional document or a functional process that got us into the place, then that's what we should have done, and that's what we should have been doing. And the question that I constantly asked of my team as they were going through and reviewing this process was, why can't we? Why can't we? Why can't we? As opposed to before, it's, okay, so what do we need to do because of this? What do we need to do because of this? It changed the whole way in which we were questioning and reviewing our whole processes.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So final question for this sort of part of the discussion. And again, it may be a bit early, but I suspect there are some patterns. I mean, what do you think will change going forward, and what will you have learnt from this whole process that you will embed into your talent acquisition strategies from now on?
I think certainly the whole ethic of why can't we needs to be the principal question in everything that we do. That's certainly one of the things that we're going to be carrying on with. Jane has asked a quick question there that says, are we going to carry on with this process? Well, actually, with the process, we will carry on with this process in a very similar way, but we just won't do it as a centralized process. What we will now be doing is we will be putting it back to the store managers and the line managers to be doing that recruitment, but we will be taking those processes where we've made those reductions in time and keeping those processes in place. So the sifting that's on our ATS, we will keep those questions in place because we know that they sifted through and made some very, very quick decisions for us. In terms of the integration between the ATS and our own personal HR system, we will be working on that being a full-time integration as opposed to a basic upload that we now do on a daily basis. So there will be a significant number of changes that actually come through with this, but we have to make sure that that branding part of it and that employee experience, I think all the way across the board, in so many things in life at this moment in time, the tolerance levels have gone right up, whether that's queuing in a supermarket for food now, queuing half an hour to get in the door or whatever it actually is. I think individuals' tolerance levels are actually going up. And so the way in which we approach this needs to change and needs to reflect that. And we need to make sure that even though that tolerance level has gone up and people would accept that, okay, it's just about joining and just about getting on board in Iceland, I don't want it to be that way going forward. But I need to be making sure that we keep a hold of those efficiencies that we've got from the recruitment process, but replace some of that time, not all of that time, but some of that time on now improving the the candidate experience so that they get an even better view about us as a business before actually joining.
Okay, brilliant. And the final question from me before I bring Rebecca in. I guess the vast majority of the hiring you've been talking about are volume roles. Were there any sort of challenges, or there may not have been the need, but I mean, for more sort of specialist roles, has that been part of your activities in the last few weeks?
Would, sorry, what do you mean, Ken? Just to
Well,
try.
be it I guess more kind of individual specialist roles, be it technology specialists or finance or talent or you know.
Yeah, and look, we've been doing some of that work in the background, but there has been an absolute agreement in the business that to increase the number of our frontline colleagues who are actually serving the customers was our focus. And there's a question that's just been asked there by Mike that has said, did we have sufficient capacity in the central resourcing teams to scale quickly? Let's be really, really clear about this. My central resourcing team is a total of 8. That's what I've got for the business. And for us, in order to achieve that, those 8 people had to be on this on a full-time basis. And that was working late into the night, that was working over the weekends. There was some exceptional performances across the team in order to get us to this point. But those other elements, those specialist elements that you're talking about there, Ken, weren't deemed as critical within the business. One of the unusual things was that actually what it has done for us is it's actually increased the number of returners to the business.
Okay.
People have have left to go to other businesses, and then they've turned around, they've seen what's happening with us, and they've come back to us and have asked either for their old roles back, or alternatively have looked at other applications, and we've been making appointments because they've previously been very, very good employees for us before.
And Catherine's just asked the natural follow-on question for that is how are you recognising that achievement from your team, or how will you recognise it?
How will I recognise it? Well, hopefully once lockdown's done, we can get together and have a good meeting. But I think one of the key things that the guys are appreciating is the amount of discussions that are happening at board level and at operational meetings that go through that have direct reference to them as a team, and they actually really, really appreciate that. And that is one of the things that I have a call with my senior team on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I constantly talk about where the team have been referred to as part of other conversations at that higher level. I think we all know by being on the call that at times recruitment can feel as a bit of a endless and dauntless task that people are never ever happy with, and that if you've got a great candidate, that's because the line manager's made the right decision and we haven't found the right person in the first place. But actually, there has been a huge recognition from people all the way from the CEO all the way down into the stores about what the recruitment team have actually delivered, how they've gone about it. And even for example, for this morning when we were talking about our next step on in terms of plans, the CEO turned around and said on the call this morning, we know resourcing is not a challenge for us, we have that sorted. And that's the sort of thing that actually the guys really, really appreciate, is just know that they're being talked about, they're being recognized, and they're being appreciated at that level.
Okay, brilliant. And then there was a quick question about the rehiring of ex-employees and whether that was that done any quicker than employees that you hadn't hired before?
Yes, it was literally a case of going through, having the conversations with the recruiting line manager, cross-referencing it with the previous line manager who they worked for, if they were different, And then it was going through and completing the right to work checks again. And that's all there it was. It was literally as simple as that and as quick as that.
Brilliant, Jeff, thank you. And I know you'll contribute to the next part of the discussion as well, because you've been involved in it for the last couple of years, but I want to bring Rebecca in. So Rebecca joined our business just over a month ago. She was previously ex-head of resourcing for Travis Perkins, and is running our benchmark program. And some of the work we're doing there is helping organizations to understand exactly where their issues are and how they can get that investment that they need. So Rebecca, do you want to just share with us some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Ken, and good morning, everyone. So I think, as we've heard from Jeff particularly, what we're going to do over the next few weeks and months can really set us up for success in the future. And we've got a great opportunity to take stock and review how we're doing things across all areas of business. And for us, that's specifically around talent acquisition. And Jeff's given some great examples of some of the things that he's started thinking differently about or done differently. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about how we can support you to do that. And as Ken said, just by way of an introduction to me, I joined the talent team 4 weeks ago to lead the benchmark programme. Before that, I'd spent a considerable number of years leading in-house resourcing teams. So I completely understand the challenges and opportunities that you can create in the role. And when Jeff was talking about some of the challenges and how resourcing teams can be viewed, I've experienced that. But I think now is a fantastic time to really show the business the value of what a great resourcing team can do. One of my passions has always been understanding what my peers are doing and looking for best practice and innovation to help me build what my strategy was and resourcing plan. And the way I managed that was through my own network, working through LinkedIn and other sort of industry events, and even at one point engaging with interim consultants to complete research projects. But all of those have significant cost and resource impacts. One of the most valuable resources for me were the industry events, and talent events in particular, because I found, a bit like today, that the focus was always on current key issues and were grounded in really practical and actionable advice. So I took part in the benchmark programme a couple of years ago, and really found the report insightful and very helpful to give me some thoughts around what I might want to take forward. Apologies. So I was really excited to join the team, because I think I really believe we can add value and support TA teams. So I think a number of you will be familiar with the benchmark. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk through how that works, and particularly in the current environment, what value we think it can add, and some of the changes that we've made for the programme for this year. So we believe the benchmark programme is unique and a critical resource for talent acquisition functions, and even more so now in the current climate. Because, as we've mentioned, understanding where you sit currently, what your priorities are, and how they compare against your peers will give you really valuable insight to prepare strategy and plans for recruiting for the future. I think Jeff made a comment around doing things we've never done before. And we know that we're currently working in a period of so many unknowns. And I think that's absolutely true. But the benchmark programme will help in providing a bit of a structure to navigate through that. So what it contains is 11 key areas across the TA landscape, such as employee brand, use of technology, etc. And we ask you to prioritise those in terms of what are the key areas that you think you need as a business to concentrate on. And then assess your business performance using a maturity matrix against all 11 components. And there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can do it just from your perspective, Or what we've seen in the past is some teams do it as a bit of a development exercise with their teams. So discussing the different questions and coming up with a collective viewpoint to input into the benchmark. Coming out of the benchmark, you'll receive a bespoke report that highlights your areas of strength, areas of weakness, and how you're performing against the priority areas together with suggested actions. But in addition, you'll find that your responses are compared with those of other companies taking part in the programme from within your sector. So that gives you the opportunity to see how you rank in comparison with them. And the relevant cohorts will be agreed with you when you register, so you'll have insight into who they are. You'll also see how you rate against the wider talent acquisition community. So I think it's important to stress, however, that whilst you see the rankings, the detail of the report is absolutely confidential to you. So overall, taking all of those components together, the insights and the information that you receive, I think is going to be essential in helping you plan when you're looking at how are you going to face these known unknowns? What's the strategy going to be when we are back in a position of where we can start the hiring processes again? How are you going to position yourself against some of your competitors? Because it's likely that the button will be turned on for a number of different businesses all at the same time. So when we talk about competing for the best candidates, that could be even more significant. And identifying key areas that you may need to focus on that you hadn't thought about before, or ways of doing things differently that you hadn't thought about before. So all of that will help you put together a plan, think about your strategy, and also give you information that is really useful if you need to put together a business plan for investment from the business, because I think we've all been there knowing how positioning a request for additional budgets can be a real challenge. So being able to talk about why it's a priority, how your business compares against others in key areas, I think is really helpful. Jeff, I know you've been a participant in the programme for the last couple of years. Are you happy to share your insight or learning from being part of the benchmark programme?
Yeah, absolutely fine with that. So where that is concerned, certainly the first time that we did it, I think it was very eye-opening in terms of the breadth of the programme and what it actually asked you to go through and review. And I'm really, really clear, and I know Ken has quoted me before on it, that says actually this programme, this benchmark survey that we actually went through, it completely informed our talent strategy for the following 2 years from when we first did it 2 years ago. And actually all we've done is we've built on it, and we've looked at it in comparison, as you said, with the other businesses that we've had in there. But it really opened up our eyes to understand what is important in our business and what isn't. And there have been a number of key decisions that have been made in our business as a result of the benchmarking survey. So I would fully support your point around using this as a business case going forward. What I would say is we started the benchmark process for this year last week with the team, and we've had a very different approach to it. And that has been as a result of the learnings that we've gone through over the past month. And we are asking ourselves those very different questions now. And certainly the ratings that we're giving ourselves within there are now significantly different to what we would have rated before, because that different way of thinking, the new challenges that we have now had to experience, have actually opened up some of those gaps that we wouldn't have realized before that we had. But because of the way in which the questions have been asked, the statements have been broken down within there, that has absolutely opened up those further, fresher ways of thinking than what we would have had previously. So I'm a complete advocate of the benchmark program, and it is a fundamental part of how we operate from a TA point of view within our business.
Good. And that's a really interesting point, actually, saying how you're assessing this year is different to how you might have assessed some of the categories last year. And I think that's another facet to the benchmark, because you'll understand the richness of the assessment from last year, and it's almost a case of building on that. So it's not that you've necessarily gone backwards, it's actually your as I say, your benchmark, the line at which you assess against has moved. So I think that just enables you to carry on progressing each year.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, as we think about this kind of next phase, going back to the point earlier, getting people back into employment and helping organizations find the talent they need is going to be hugely important. And so as we think about just kind of wrapping up, and maybe a few final comments, if there are any other questions that people have, then now would be a good time to just pop them on the Q&A. I think one of the things that we may see, which was already a trend, is actually an acceleration of organizations hiring for attributes rather than experience. I think that was already happening, and I just wonder if that's something that we'll see as we go back into hopefully a very rapid period of rebound, if organizations sort of spend much more time looking for the attributes that are really important to the job, rather than do you have 3 or 4 years experience doing something similar, because I'm not sure that was always the best way of doing it. So I think that's one thing that we might see. Any further comments or observations from you, Jeff, and Rebecca?
Yeah, from me, I think what you're saying about the skills and the future state of what we're needing, Ken, I think that's really interesting, because I think the last 12, 18 months, certainly within talent acquisition, there's been a lot of conversation around, we know new skills, new roles are coming that haven't even been designed yet. We need to start thinking about the future. It feels that the last few weeks have almost accelerated some of that thinking, and also given us the opportunity to perhaps remove some of the barriers that were in the way before. And certainly Jeff's given some great examples of how within Iceland they've changed their way of thinking. And I think the last few weeks as well have also helped us with the benchmark think about something else that we wanted to weave in, which is how the different aspects of talent acquisition will be affected by COVID-19. So we don't know the answers to that, but we do know, or we can anticipate some of the impact that it may have. So I think we've just got a quick pulse survey that we wanted to share with everybody, using some of the assessment categories for the benchmark. So if you remember, we referenced there's 11 different areas. However, on the pulse survey, we were only able to use a maximum of 10. So just for this purpose, we've omitted youth and graduate employment. But you'll see on the screen the other categories are listed there. So can we ask you all just have a look through and pick out what are your 3 most important areas based on your current concerns today? If we can just give you all a few minutes to have a look at that.
It's really quick.
And it'll be very interesting to see if it gives us a view that we would have anticipated maybe a month or so ago in terms of the areas of priority, or if the last few weeks have shifted people's thinking a little bit.
Well, historically, the focus was on employer brand, candidate experience, and diversity. So those were the 3 kind of top scoring areas. So are we able to get the results, Sarah?
waiting with bated breath.
It's like Eurovision. Oh, there we go.
So candidate experience, way
One,
ahead,
yeah.
isn't it? That's and then is brand second? It looks like brand and engagement is second, and then diversity and recruitment planning and effectiveness sort of joint third. And I think that certainly the top two for me aren't a surprise. Candidate experience, particularly in the current environment. I was reading an article from someone saying that actually how you look after your candidates now, if you're not recruiting, or even if you are, can be quite critical to future success. And equally with the employer brand, you'll see every day on LinkedIn some really great examples of things businesses are doing to support their employees and the wider community that will only go to support them from an attraction perspective in the future.
Yeah, and it's very encouraging that the candidate experience thing is the most important still, because, you know, as we move to a world where there may be a surplus of candidates, at least in the short term, and that might be the next 18 months or so, it's there's always a pressure that candidate experience becomes less important. So it's nice to see that that seems to be still the number one priority. Hopefully people are taking a long-term view. That's a good indication of. Okay, I think our time is just about up. We've packed, I have to say, a lot in. Jeff, thank you again for taking the time to share your experiences and insights. It's been really interesting, and as you say, it's amazing that it's only a time scale of weeks that we're talking about. But I think it's such an interesting time to be part of this world, and there are going to be undoubtedly some big challenges ahead. And I hope in our little way we've been able to help you think about how you might kind of meet some of those challenges. Rebecca will no doubt follow up with everyone regarding the benchmark, and hopefully we can get a number of you involved in that as well. I think that's it. Anything else from Rebecca or Jeff?
Not from me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we've had our first compliment. Thank you, Catherine. Really interesting. Thank you very much. Good, everyone. Thank you very much, and we'll hopefully see you again another webinar soon, and see you again in real life, hopefully soon as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.